This video is on the SSL-EQ in the bundle. It's a 4-band equalizer, very similar to the EQ and the E channel strip here, but there's a bit more gain, and you do have a slightly different curve. However, working between these two EQs, you're going to find is very, very comfortable. Now, we're going to get rid of the channel strip for a second and talk about this baby right here. This is the plugin that I would use out of this bundle if you were looking to do some fine-tuned EQ and you definitely wanted to go with SSL. Let's look at the plugin from the left hand to the right hand. Every single SSL bundle plugin has an analog on-off switch. By default, it's on. However, right now, I'm going to have it off, and I'll show you why when we get to the workflow video a bit later on. What the analog on-off button does is it gives you that filter of all those harmonic distortion sounds, the analog artifacts, and that saturation that really gives you that SSL warmth and sound. You don't necessarily always want it though. Sometimes you just want the functionality of the EQ and how that EQ works. In this case, that's exactly what I want. So we're going to go forward with that. To the right-hand side of that, you've got your high-pass filter. Fairly self-explanatory. It's like every other high-pass filter. It's off by default. If you turn it on, you can actually decide how much of a cut you really want to do. So therefore, if you're working in a mix and you want to clean up your track so it's not interfering with any other frequencies on neighboring tracks, this is a great tool, and I use it quite a lot. Then is the low frequency. Up the top, you've got the gain for that frequency. Below it, you have the frequency control. The blue knobs are the low-mid frequency. Now, the low-mid frequency here are pretty much exactly the same as the low-mid frequencies here. However, you've got three knobs. This button here, in the middle of the EQ, is different. Let's get rid of the channel strip again. This is the Divide 3 button. Now, it may sound obvious, but what the Divide 3 button does is divide your frequency by 3. So say, for example, if you dial in 300 Hertz, you're going to find, once you press the Divide 3, that you end up with 100. Now, it may seem obvious, but this is the way it works. Sometimes you may be using the low frequency for something completely different, to concentrate on a different frequency, which is why it's always really cool to have a lot more overlap between each of those sections. So the Divide by 3 button extends the range without having to compromise control sensitivity. Not having that overlap between sections is often really, really frustrating. So what this does is give you a lot more precise control. Now let's look at the rest of the low-mid frequencies. Up here, like the low frequency, is your gain. Here is the mid-frequency. This is the low-mid frequency control. So you can pick exactly which frequency you want. This is your Q, so you can decide exactly how fine-tuned your work really is. If you have it all the way here, you're really going to be working on one specific frequency. The more you dial it to the right, the more it's going to interleave with other frequencies, giving you a fatter or bigger sound, but generally not something that you want to do if you're fine-tuning it so it doesn't overlap with other tracks' frequencies. This is great for working out exactly what's going to cross over and what's not. Let's move on to the high-mid frequencies. Again, you have your gain, you have your frequency control, and then you have your Q. Exactly the same. The broader is on the right, the more fine-tuned Q is on the left. This is your times 3, which is a lot easier to explain than the divide by 3. This literally takes your frequency and times it by 3. Again, giving you a lot more control so you can have those overlaps without sacrificing another section where you're working on other frequencies. The high frequency is 2 knobs, gain and the frequency. Very simple, easy to use. This plugin on a whole is incredibly easy to use. Give yourself 5 or 10 minutes, loop a track, and mess around with it, and you'll find that you'll be up and running in no time. Over here in the far right is a button that may seem a bit weird on an EQ plugin. It gives you the option of turning the EQ on or off. It's very simple and it's a great idea. If you have the EQ off, you may want the analog on. Why? Because a lot of people want the freedom to be able to run their audio through a classic piece of audio hardware. Now, if you have EQ off and analog on, and you're pushing up the gain, you're going to find that you get a bit more of that SSL sound, and you don't need the EQ. So it's a double plugin. It gives you the magic of the SSL sound if that's all you want, or you can have the EQ or you can have them both. Next to the EQ in and out is your reverse phase button, and below that is the overall gain of the plugin. Click here on the VUs, and you'll clear your peaks. In a nutshell, that's the SSL EQ. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the E and the G channel strip.